Okay, this is Frank from Gettysburg Historic Walking Tours. And this video series is going to be entitled Racehorse Alley. And it's also going to have something to do with a man that lived here in town named John McClellan. Now, currently today, I am standing on the corner of Racehorse Alley and North Stratton Street, directly across from the Gettysburg Fire Department. And if you look at this sign here, it says Racehorse Alley Parking Plaza, which today is a part of the parking garage. And we'll get to that in another part here on this video series. But I want to take a look as we focus in on the sign. And you'll see two horse riders, which appear to be racing down the street. And historically that is wrong. It should just be one racehorse driver, and we're going to talk about that in the video series. But first I want to point out that Racehorse Alley is the longest alley in Gettysburg. It starts about a half a mile east of here off of a hotel, and it comes all the way through by the fire department and then continues on this direction, goes by the square and then beyond, and it ends up at the end all the way at Route 30, Buford Avenue, not too far from today's Gettysburg post office. So as far as alleys are concerned, it is the longest alley in the town of Gettysburg, and there are many alleys that people don't know about, including a video that we done earlier called Wall Alley or Wall Street. Now, the riders which are depicted here, really there should be one, and that should be a man named John McClellan. John McClellan was part of the McClellan family that owned what is today the Gettysburg Hotel on the square, which you can see the back of up here. His brother George operated the tavern during the Battle of Gettysburg in 1863. Now, John McClellan was born in 1808, and he was a pretty wealthy man, and he liked to do things that were on the wild side. One of the things that he liked was fast horses. Today, he would be equivalent to the person who rides up and down Route 30 over here in a Corvette or a Camaro and likes to spin the tires. John McClellan liked fast horses. In fact, he liked fast horses so much that he disregarded life of other human beings, and he would race his horses up and down York and Chambersburg Street, which today is Route 30. And this created a problem because there were young children and elderly people that were on the roads as John McClellan carelessly rode his horse up and down today what is Route 30. So what happened was the town council of Gettysburg decided to take some action toward Mr. McClellan, where they wouldn't have him be in trouble with the law in any way. But what they decided to do was they decided to give him an alternate route to race his horses. Now you can imagine today, if I was driving my car 100 miles an hour up Route 30, what would happen? I'd be ticketed, arrested, and such on. But back then, John McClellan was a part of a powerful family here in Gettysburg, and it was slightly overlooked. So what they decided to do was create Racehorse Alley and allow McClellan not to race his horses up and down York and Chambersburg Street, but to move him north and allow him to race his horses up in this alley. Probably one of the reasons that Racehorse Alley is so long. He needed that to get the speed for his horses. So anybody that comes to the town of Gettysburg today and parks in the town parking garage, which sits here along Racehorse Alley, and they may see the sign, now they know what that sign stands for. Again, this has been Racehorse Alley and John McClellan, Part 1, here on Gettysburg Historic Walking Tours. Frank from Gettysburg Historic Walking Tours, and I am standing here today on Racehorse Alley next to the township parking garage, and this is going to be part 2 of our series on Racehorse Alley and John McClellan. And again, as I said, the McClellan family owned the McClellan Tavern, which today would be the Gettysburg Hotel, which you can see dead center in the video. And just over here would be the town circle or the square. This hotel has expanded a great deal since its inception, and today has even extended beyond. But Racehorse Alley and John McClellan racing his horses up down this alley in the 1860s is something you have to really picture in your mind. But this area is also the beginnings of Gettysburg. There is a boulder over here that has a plaque on it, and I'll read from it. It says, "Near this site stood Samuel Getty's Tavern, at which on June the 24th, 1775, most of Captain Michael Dowdall's company of riflemen was enlisted from the Marsh Creek settlement in prompt response to the call of Continental Congress for volunteers. The battalion of which they became was a part of one of the first units from west of the Hudson River to join General George Washington's army near Boston. This memorial plaque was placed by the Gettysburg National Bank on June 24th, 1975 as a part of the Adams County observance of the bicentennial of American nationhood." So it was here in the area of where the parking garage today that Samuel Getty's had his tavern. Now, of course, the Getty's family started what would today become Gettysburg. Originally, this was called the Marsh Creek Settlement. And then after the Getty's family founded the town, it was called Getty's Town. It wasn't until 1800 when the borough became its own county named Adams County that Getty's Town became Gettysburg. And then, of course, 63 years later, with the Battle of Gettysburg, this town was changed forever. But one time on this site stood Samuel Getty's Tavern, which some member of Captain Michael Dowdall's company of riflemen was enlisted and recruited for the American Revolution. So Gettysburg does not only have a Civil War significance, but they also have an American Revolution significance. And mentioning that those troops went on to fight with George Washington would come back into the Marsh Creek settlement and the Getty's Town area in the 1780s when he was heading toward Pittsburgh and coming back from Pittsburgh with the Whiskey Rebellion. And he would stay at a tavern just about 3 miles to the north of where we stand today. The current parking garage was built between 1988 and 1990. And again, this is right along of Racehorse Alley where John McClellan would race his racehorses, which was approved by the town council because of him racing on the main street out here. This has been part 2 of Racehorse Alley and John McClellan here on Gettysburg Historic Walking Tours. Racehorse Alley and John McClellan, part 3 here on Gettysburg Historic Walking Tours. And I am standing on the 3rd story of the parking garage that we looked at in an earlier video, and I'm going to talk about an incident that happened here on October the 19th, 1842. A man named John Wise, who was a very famous aeronaut and balloonist, came to Gettysburg to put on a show, and it would be the 39th time that he would take a hot air balloon up into the air. He was one of the most famous balloonists of the day, and this happened before the Civil War. So he comes here to Gettysburg and he sets up over near the town square to head up in his balloon. He's going to launch himself into the air, and as he approached the basket with a large crowd, a man named John McClellan, who was in his early 30s, stepped forward, and he asked Wise, he said, "How much would it take to go up in that balloon?" Now, Wise really didn't want him in the balloon, didn't need him in the balloon, and as we know, in the previous parts, John McClellan was a man that did not take no for an answer. So Wise says to him, $100. Now today that would be equivalent to me having my car and someone asking me for a ride down into the town of Gettysburg, and I say, yeah, I'll give you a ride, but it costs you about $3,000. Most people would turn away and say, no way. McClellan then exclaims, I will give you $50, which was still a good sum of money. So Wise agreed, and he said, okay, fork the money over. Now McClellan gave him the money, and he climbed in to the basket. Wise gave him some instructions on how a balloon operated. Now, a balloon, you would have a ballast, you would have a rope that would come down to the ground where people could allow you to go up and then pull you down. And then there was also an emergency plug that if the balloon needed to come down for a landing because the ballast would fail, you could pull a plug and it would cut off the gas to the balloon, allowing it to deflate and then lower itself to the ground. So McClellan climbs into the basket. He receives these orders, and Wise at this time had thought that the joke had gone far enough, and he told McClellan to step out of the balloon, but he refused to do so. He insisted that he had paid for a rite of passage and that he would go. He didn't want to relent the $50 to McClellan, so he thought, well, McClellan will go up in this balloon, get air sick, and then we'll pull him back down. So McClellan then begins to rise into the air in this balloon. He's not getting sick. He's not tired of it. And Wise, seeing this, he thinks it's about time for him, and he begins to have the men pull him down to the ground. McClellan, seeing this happening, decides he ain't going down without a fight, so he pulls out a knife and he cuts the rope. Now, McClellan rises to about 2 miles in the air, which is, almost 5,000 feet. Now, he's drifting at that day on October. The winds were heading eastward. So McClellan begins to rise in the air about twice the height of a normal balloon, and he ends up heading into the air, heading eastward. People are clapping, people are cheering. Now remember, this is a crazy stunt, and McClellan just pulls this off, and people are standing around clapping as he heads eastward. Wise, no doubt, is angry, and he's wondering what's going to happen. Where's he going with my balloon? McClellan begins to head toward the town of New Oxford, and he sees New Oxford. And when he gets over New Oxford, people are coming out and they're cheering and they're clapping their hands. Then he heads toward Abbottstown, and he sees the town being 2 miles up in the air. And people come out and start cheering him, and his arrogance and getting the way he wants realizes that this is actually a fun trip. He's getting the attention that he so desires. And then after leaving Abbottstown, he realizes that up ahead would lie York, and then Lancaster, and then Philadelphia, and then he would cross into New Jersey if he kept going, and maybe even to the Atlantic Ocean. Seeing this in the not knowing how long the gas would hold out, he realizes that he could be putting himself into great danger. So somewhere between Abbottstown and York, he remembers the instruction that Wise had given him back here on the Gettysburg Square about the emergency pool plug with the gas. So somewhere after Abbottstown, John McClellan pulls the gas cord and the balloon begins to deflate. Now, when you have a balloon that's deflating at a high rate of speed in high winds, that is a recipe for disaster. John McClellan would go down, and would go down quickly. He would actually crash a few miles on the western side of York, Pennsylvania, probably somewhere in like the Dallas town area. He would crash his balloon. He would survive the crash. The balloon was slightly damaged, and of course Wise was not happy about it. But McClellan would survive to tell this tale, and would come back to Gettysburg and resume his duties as the head of a powerful family. John McClellan was a clerk at the Gettysburg Bank for over 30 years. He was also a member of the Presbyterian Church here in town, and you know, he was well liked. But this is one of those stories with John McClellan and his balloon ride in 1842 that often is not told. And it shows the type of wild personality that Mr. McClellan had. But it all happened right here, near where we're standing today, where the balloon in October of 1842 took off from the square, not far from the tavern that the McClellans ran, and headed on an easterly trajectory toward York, Pennsylvania. This has been the story of Racehorse Alley and John McClellan here on Gettysburg Historic Walking Tours, and I am Frank P. Marone Jr.